Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm Lindsay. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at the McCourt School of Public Policy with Georgetown University. I am happy to be here, and I want to thank our partners at Education USA for allowing us to join and talk to you a little bit more about applying to graduate schools in the US. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can see our presentation. So there we go. So yes, so tips for building a competitive application. So I'm going to talk a little bit about McCourt specific offerings towards the end of the session, but for those that are kind of interested in learning more about our policy graduate programs and the McCourt School at Georgetown. But I want to keep the session more general in order to provide general tips for individuals that are interested in applying to graduate school in the US. So we're going to go over a few elements that most graduate school applications tend to have. I'm going to give some general application tips from an admissions perspective, and then we'll talk about McCourt's graduate program offerings in the community here. And then hopefully, I think we should have a McCourt public policy graduate student join us halfway through the session, and I will ask him a couple questions that I think will be helpful for folks that are interested in applying to graduate school in the US. So these are the typical application elements that we see required of most graduate programs. So we'll see a statement of purpose or a personal statement. Sometimes it's called that, motivation statement. Typical applications will require a resume, or a CV. So that kind of outlines your work experience and educational background. Typically, there are test scores that are required. A lot of schools these days are kind of moving towards test optional, or there's a waiver process. I can talk a little bit more about that, but there are some schools that still require a standardized test. Letters of recommendation tend to be the norm, and then I'll end with some general tips. So we're going to start by talking about the statement of purpose. Some of these recommendations may seem obvious to some folks, but you would be surprised what we see from an admissions kind of reviewing process. So our statement of purpose tends to be, in my opinion, one of the more important components of the application. So typically it's the only part of the application where we get to hear from the applicant and, a little bit about themselves and why they are applying for graduate school at this particular point in their academic or professional career. And it helps us kind of see, if the applicant is a good fit for the program that they're applying for, and they can make that argument. So there are different guidelines depending on the school that you're applying for and the program that you're applying for. So I would definitely encourage, it's not like a standardized process across all graduate schools and programs. So even we have 4 different programs, and we have different questions for each program for the statement of purpose. So I would definitely recommend reviewing the website for the specific program that you're applying to make sure you're aware of what they're looking for. So make sure you answer the question, follow directions, and be specific in the statement of purpose. So a lot of times there'll be a length requirement. They'll ask you to answer specific questions that kind of pertain to the program that you're applying for. Try not to use the same statement for multiple schools, and tailor your answers specifically to each school. So I have seen statements that will name a different university, and that, isn't the best, I guess, it doesn't really look that great from our point of view if you mention a different school. So it shows that you maybe didn't proofread, or that you're not kind of being thorough in your review process, and make sure you're being detail oriented there. And definitely proofread it. So maybe even having like another person proofread it, or 2 people proofread it before you send it in. And once you've written it, think about your statement and how it might read from the perspective of a faculty member or an admissions representative. So make sure that you feel like it's clear for someone that may not have all the background information on you specifically. So a lot of times too, like, it'll sound like this is a good candidate, very motivated, has done really well academically and professionally, but we may not really get a clear picture of why this student is interested in our graduate school or our program specifically. So that is also something that we want to see. We don't want to just see this kind of general statement. We want it to be very tailored. So make sure to state your motivation for applying. For the resume, a 1 to 2 page resume is typically what is most appropriate for U.S. graduate schools. So if you can kind of reduce the size to that, it also helps from an admissions perspective. We're reviewing a lot of applications to kind of see information that is the most relevant and the most important, kind of in a condensed, easy to review format. So 1 to 2 page resume. If you're not really sure kind of what the typical format of a US resume or CV looks like, you can Google it. There's no like right template or anything. We see different templates, but you can kind of see a general format. So typically it's chronological. Most recent work experience tends to be at the top. Educational history is included. If you've kind of, graduated recently, a lot of folks put that right at the top. If it's been a few years and you want to highlight the professional kind of background, you can put the professional experience first and the educational history at the bottom. If you don't have a lot of work experience, like professional postgraduate experience, definitely include internships. Volunteer experience is relevant. Extracurricular experience, if you've taken on leadership roles in your different student organizations or volunteer activities, that's always something we want to see. And then listing significant awards or kind of honors or acknowledgements that you've received. Test scores. This tends to be a pretty big source of anxiety for a lot of students. So this is now, I think we're seeing a trend where some schools, it's becoming optional to submit a GRE, GMAT, LSAT score. So we at McCourt, it's still a requirement, but we do offer a waiver option. This was kind of something that started during the pandemic because a lot of folks had trouble accessing the test or there are financial constraints. So we kind of offer the option to waive it. We still strongly recommend it. And then if you decide to waive it, we ask you to provide additional information of why you're requesting the waiver and also listing quantitative skill sets, since that's kind of a big piece of our application process. We ask you to kind of list like what we would be looking for in the standardized test if you're choosing to waive it. So I would encourage you to touch base with your particular school that you're applying for to be aware of any minimum requirements. We at McCourt don't have minimum requirements because we take a very holistic approach, but we do have averages that can help guide, where you would like, if you're preparing for the test, kind of what you should maybe think about and try to prepare for to try to reach those scores just for averages, but there are no numerical cutoffs, but some schools do have those. So make sure you're aware of those minimum requirements. Allow time to prepare for the test and take the test. So I would actually work backwards, look at your school's deadlines, and then see how long it takes for the test scores to be scored and for the official test scores to be delivered to that school. So sometimes schools can be flexible if you apply and then they'll allow some time for your official test scores to arrive, but other schools, they need it by the deadline. So make sure you're allowing time to prepare the test and to send the official score reports to the school. There are several different kinds of tests. I think the most common for a lot of graduate programs is the GRE. And most public policy students are taking the GRE. We will also accept the LSAT or the GMAT, but that's not really the norm. So we tend to see most people submitting the general record exam. That's the GRE for most graduate programs. Most business schools, their primary test is the GMAT, so the general management test. And then the law schools their main test, or the most popular, is the LSAT. And then medical school is the MCAT. And so just making sure, what tests are accepted for different programs and what the kind of averages or minimum requirements they might have. And then also, if your native language isn't English, a lot of schools will require that you submit a TOEFL or IELTS exam to show your English proficiency, just to make sure that that is not going to be a barrier or a challenge for you in the American education system. So there are also guidelines and kind of recommended scores per school. Some schools do have a minimum cutoff for those exams. So just make sure you're reviewing that information on the website as well. Okay, so letters of recommendation. These, each school requires a different number that are required. So McCourt, we require 3. And a lot of schools require 1 or require 2. So make sure, again, I think that there's a theme here. Make sure you're reviewing the website and being very detail oriented about the application requirements for each program in each school. So we recommend sticking to the required number. We require 3. We don't really want to see more than 3 because, again, we're reviewing a lot of applications. And so that's really kind of the amount that we feel we get a good sense of the applicant. And then also, we don't want to see too many recommendations because we can't review all of those. So stick to the required number. Request the recommendations early. So be respectful of your recommender's time. Don't wait to the last minute. I think giving folks about a month or 2 maybe to prepare the letter, I think is appropriate. Try not to say, hey, I need this by next week, because sometimes recommenders, they're very, they're busy. They have a full caseload, or their plates are full with other responsibilities. And then also they might be writing other recommendation letters. So make sure you give them a good amount of time to get the letter together, and it's not a last minute request. I would also recommend sharing your goals with the recommender so they kind of know what school you're applying to and why, so they can kind of speak to your strengths and abilities and why you would be a good fit for this particular program. So you might want to attach your resume when you're asking the recommender to write the letter for you. And then also it's important to be strategic about who you're choosing to write these recommendation letters for you. So some schools, we prefer at least one academic and 1 professional recommendation, just so we can kind of see the perspective from different sides. But that's not a strict requirement. So we really just want to see folks that know you the best and can speak and write you the strongest recommendation possible. So you could choose an academic reference, you could choose a professional reference. There could be, somebody from your volunteer organization, a mentor, a sports coach that can kind of speak to your leadership potential, or kind of other team work skills. So, choosing folks that you think would really spend a lot of quality time with you and kind of speak to your strengths. So we do get the question of, if you have worked with someone that's a pretty high profile figure, but maybe they don't really know details or specifics, you've kind of worked with them from a distance, but just because they're such a well-known figure, some people think that would get the attention of the admissions committee and be really impressive. Obviously that is impressive, but if they don't really they can't speak specifically to their work with you, and it's like kind of a template form letter of recommendation, that doesn't really help us, because it just kind of shows us that this famous person. It doesn't really give us insight into your potential as a graduate student. So really, again, picking people that know you the best and can write very tailored, detailed letters. So some general tips. Be aware of basic requirements for all of the programs that you're applying for. So some schools have prerequisites. So they might have a course that's a prerequisite, or there might be work experience. So some programs require a couple of years of work experience, some don't. Some, like for our programs, we require, for some of them, there's no work experience. For some, there's 2 years, and one of our programs requires 5 years. So just being aware of those basic requirements, also being aware of the courses. So some of our programs require principles of microeconomics as a prerequisite. You have to have that prior to starting the program, but you don't have to have it at the time of application. So just kind of, again, that's just highlighting that they're very specific kind of requirements for different programs. So just making sure you're in contact with the admissions department or reviewing the information available on the website. Pay attention to the deadlines. Kind of similarly, we have 3 different deadlines. A couple of our deadlines you have to apply in order to be considered for scholarship. The final deadline, you're not guaranteed to be considered for merit-based scholarship. So just being aware of those deadlines. Some schools are very strict and kind of go by, midnight and that time zone. So making sure you're aware of that and preparing accordingly and not waiting to the last minute. Also, don't make assumptions. Feel free to reach out to the admissions office to clarify. We're happy to help. That's like why we're there. So you can email or call and just to clarify that information. Some graduate programs require interviews. And it's a mandatory part of the process. Others, it's on invitation only basis. So if that does happen, make sure you prepare for the interview and have questions prepared. So a lot of times the admissions interview process, it helps us get a sense and get to know an applicant outside of their application, but it also gives the applicant an opportunity to get to know the school to see if that is a good fit for them. So, the best interviews that I've been a part of is the student shows a genuine interest in the school as well as trying to impress or sell themselves. So they're asking a lot of questions to get more information, and that shows that they've done a lot of research and they're genuinely interested in the program. Again, don't wait till the last minute. I think I've said that a few times, so make sure you're preparing accordingly. I would advise, looking at the deadlines first and then backing out from there and planning accordingly. So knowing when the application needs to be submitted and all the materials, and then looking at all the requirements and kind of getting a sense of how long it's going to take to get that submitted, and giving yourself kind of like prep deadlines along the way. And so you're kind of prepared to submit by the deadline. And also proofread your application, proofread your academic statement, proofread your resume, have someone else look at it. I think that, you're going to be sending out a lot of information, and it can be a lot, and it's easy to miss things if you've been looking at a document for hours or rewriting. And so getting a fresh set of eyes or someone that is, has skills in proofreading and offering feedback, or has kind of an eye for detail, someone you trust, get them to take a look at your application before you submit it. I'm going to just talk briefly about Georgetown and our McCourt School programs. So the McCourt School is a graduate school at Georgetown University that's located in Washington, D.C. It's kind of the policy center of the US, if not the world. So it's a really, really great place to study public policy if that's something that you're interested in. We are a graduate school only, so we only have graduate programs at this time. We don't have any PhD programs, and there is an undergraduate program in the works. It's just not available or open yet. So we have 4 master's programs. Our flagship program is the Master of Public Policy. It's our oldest and largest program at the McCourt School. We have a full-time option and a part-time option. It's a 2-year full-time, 3-year part-time program. Typically, we see about 125 students entering that program each year for the full-time, and then about 20 to 25 that join each year for the part-time program. One of the strengths of the McCourt School, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, kind of the McCourt Advantage, we're pretty quantitatively rigorous when it comes to studying public policy. So we're all about driving evidence-based public policy decisions and educating our students with the skills necessary to go out and practice that. So there's a 3-course quantitative methods sequence in the core curriculum. I think most other policy programs only require 2. There's 2 intermediate microeconomics courses. So a lot of hard skills that you're going to be learning in the program. We also have an international development program. So that is a 2-year full-time program only. It is similar in structure to the Master of Public Policy and very quantitatively focused. However, all of the core classes have a development kind of spin to them. So they're focused on the developing world, and the case studies and data sets are focused there. Like I said, 2-year full-time only program. It's a small cohort. of about 25 students, and that program does have a work experience requirement. So we do require 2 years of post-grad relevant work experience to join that program, just because it is a smaller cohort. And so that kind of adds to the classroom discussion. And then also, since it is so specialized in international development, having that background to know that's what you want to study is helpful as well. So the Master of Public Policy, there's no work experience requirement. On average, our students tend to have 2 to 3 years. And then our newest program is the Master of Data Science for Public Policy. This, I think, has been around for about 3 years now. And so this program was really developed at the intersection of data science and public policy. It's a pretty core heavy program. There's only 2 electives. It's only 39 credits. Our MPP and MIDP programs are 48 credits. It is a 2-year full-time program though. And it is pretty core heavy with only 2 electives. Half of the core curriculum is coming from our data analytics master's program at Georgetown, and the other half of the core curriculum is from kind of our public policy kind of core curriculum. So it's really at the intersection. It's for folks that want to really tool up in kind of those hard skills, the data science skills, but also looking at it from a public policy lens. So knowing kind of what questions to ask, how to communicate about it to folks that are at the decision-making level, and kind of talking about the data as it relates to public policy. So that's a really exciting program. It's a smaller cohort as well. About 25 students enter that program each year. And then finally, we have our Master of Policy Management program. This program is what we call our mid-career professionals program. It does require 5 years of post-grad professional experience. It doesn't have to necessarily be policy experience. So we see folks using this as a way to pivot into public policy as well. But this program is a 36 credit hour program. So you can complete it in 1 calendar year as a full-time student. If you're a part-time student, it's 2 calendar years. So there is a part-time option. It kind of takes a 30,000 foot look at policy. So it's not as, the curriculum, there's not as intensive of the quantitative piece. You're kind of looking at it from a decision-making kind of leadership position where you're kind of understanding kind of the quantitative aspect, and you can be like a critical consumer of policy analysis, but you're not necessarily the producer of it. And so that is a really experienced cohort of students coming from all different backgrounds, very impressive. It is, I think, about like 60 or 70 students that enter the program each year, but it starts in the summer as opposed to the fall. So it's a summer, fall, spring if you do it part-time, and then if you do it full-time, it's just 1 calendar year, summer, fall, spring. So that's kind of a quick overview of our programs. There's so much more information and outlines of the curriculum, student profiles on our website, which I'll have the link to at the very end. And then I'm gonna one more slide, and then we also have one of our current MPP students, Master of Public Policy students, here to kind of talk about the program more specifically and the student experience. So the McCourt Advantage, there's several things that we talk about that kind of we think are very unique and set McCourt apart from other policy programs and graduate programs. I think one thing that is really hard to get a sense of in a virtual environment or from the website is really our community. And I also think that that tends to be one of the first things that our students kind of say as one of their favorite things about the McCourt School is that we just have a very unique, welcoming, collaborative community of students, of faculty, of staff. And so I think, you know, Georgetown in general and McCourt tends to attract very motivated, intelligent, passionate individuals, but it's not like a competitive environment. It's very collaborative. Everybody at the end of the day is really just trying to work together to solve problems and improve policy. So it's a very engaged, collaborative community, and I really enjoy kind of working there and being a part of it. Like I mentioned, our curriculum, we think the quantitative aspect of it, of educating our students to drive evidence-based policy, is something that we think we do really well. And we think that our students kind of come out of the program with the hard skills necessary. And I think that we have a reputation. So McCourt students have a proven track record. And so employers tend to know that about McCourt students, that they are very well prepared to go into the working world. There's a lot of learning opportunities outside the class as well. Since most of our students are full-time, there's a very active kind of extracurricular student organization community. So I'm going to ask Vincenzo to also talk a little bit about that, but we have, I think, over like 15 student-led and run organizations. So there's some that we have a student association, which is kind of the student government. We have a journal, public policy review. We have kind of international development, like nonprofit almost. It's called the McCourt Policy and Practice, and they actually travel abroad and do some service work for underrepresented communities abroad. And then we have some regional based organizations, and then some kind of policy specific organizations as well. So they're doing all kinds of programming and events all the time on campus. So there's always something going on. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our location in Washington, D.C., which is kind of the policy hub of the nation, if not the world, is just, it is like a perfect place to kind of study policy. There's lots of opportunities for our students to take on internships, get practical experience, kind of network and meet leaders and experts in the field that they're interested in. And it just allows a lot of opportunities for our students to get a lot of practical experience outside the classroom. We have world-class faculty and policy experts that teach and come speak at McCourt. So I think also being part of the Georgetown kind of brand, it's very well-known and respected university. I think that we attract, world-class faculty that are very impressive and policy experts to come speak on our campus and interact with our students. And then our alumni network is it's a global alumni network. And I would say that that Hoyas, which is what we call our Georgetown students and grads, are very loyal and willing to kind of help out a fellow Georgetown alum or current student. And so the network that you will have access to is a very valuable asset. And so you'll kind of make really awesome connections with your classmates. And then alumni come back and do kind of recruiting events, networking events. They do professional development workshops and panels with our current students. So there's always, a way to kind of get connected with our alumni. And that's just a really valuable resource that our students have. So here is the admissions email address. So if you have any questions about what I presented, about McCourt or the admissions process or kind of graduate school in general, feel free to reach out to that email address. We're pretty responsive, usually get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. And then this is a link to the McCourt School's website. There's tons of information there. It's a really, really, really good resource. I would encourage you to kind of take a look and kind of get more information about our community and our programs. So I think that's all that I have for my presentation. So I'm going to see if Vincenzo is on the call. So we will.
Yes, he is.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yes, Vincenzo. Ciao Vincenzo.
Buonasera Vincenzo.
Buonasera Vincenzo.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So this kind of second part of the presentation is going to be more informal. I'm just going to have a couple questions for you just to kind of help you talk about your student experience at McCourt. So if you could actually just go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us what program you're a part of, what year, where you're from, and maybe how you chose the McCourt School. I think that would get us started.
Okay. I'm Vincenzo Caro. I'm 25 years old and I'm from Matera, a little city in the south of Italy. I'm a first year MPP student at McCourt School of Public Policy from Georgetown University. And my policy area of interest is economics and technology. I choose McCourt because McCourt School is in Washington, D.C. That for me is like the heart of policy practice and the heart of the Western world, where you can really understand how the Western is working. And also because McCourt has a lot of program and a lot of classes based on development So this is why I choose that the school, and also I found Georgia Akerlof as a member of faculty. That is one of my favorite economists, and so I decided to join. And this semester, I'm attending his class. It is a wonderful class, and I'm learning. Even if my background is in economics and statistics, I'm learning more in this class than what I learned in the last few years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of folks are very interested to meet George Akerlof and are excited to be able to take one of his classes as a McCourt student. So what advice might you give as an international student to a prospective international student? Like, you've kind of been through the process of deciding to apply for graduate school, looking at schools. Can you just kind of talk about that process and what it was like for you, and if you have any advice for international students?
Okay, first advice, you should start planning to apply at least 6-8 months before the deadline. It's important to make a good resume, a good cover letter, and also it's important to be sure of the choice of the school, because you have to, at least for McCourt, you have to write your statement of purpose. So you have to understand and to be sure of what are you looking for in the future, why you're choosing the school, and what would you like to, what are you expecting from graduate school. I remember also that I studied for GMAT in order to apply for this school, and studying for GMAT is it requires a lot of months of preparation. So it's possible also to apply with a GRE, Lindsay, is it right? Because I did the GMAT, but it's possible to apply also with GRE. Okay. That maybe is easier, but I will recommend, if you are interested in economics, or if you would like to take an MBA course later, to just prepare a GMAT. I remember that I only applied to McCourt here in the US, and the process is a bit different from any other school in Europe. So my advice is to ask to other students, and we have a program that is called Student Ambassador in Georgetown, and I'm one of them. So you can email me and you can find any information on the website. Mm-hmm. And if you are not sure about talking with another student, you can always send an email to the admission office. That is always open to reply and to help for the application process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I just put your profile in the chat.
Thank you.
And then I'm also going to just link to our McCourt ambassadors in general.
Yeah, it's good to know that you're an ambassador, so that we can, share your email with students that will see the recording of this webinar. Sometimes we feel guilty to have Italian testimonials from a presentation to get emails, but I think that is one thing that you like, being contacted, so that students can have an insider's view of what studying at McCourt would be like, right?
Yes, there is no problem. You can share the link of.
But only with the motivated students. Don't worry, we won't. We don't want you to lose your time. But we do sometimes have extremely motivated students in this field of study, and what they're looking for as a first thing is to talk with an Italian. I know it might sound very strange, but they like to see how someone their age, coming from their country, is experiencing studying a specific university. For them, it makes for them it's very important. And then, of course, we can put them in contact with Lindsay, who has been so kind and gave us a lot of information about the terrific program that Georgetown has in this field. Laura, do you want to ask something else to Vincenzo?
Yes, because I was surprised to hear that you only applied to McCourt. This is maybe unusual from my point of view, because usually we advise the students to apply to several universities, also when it comes to the Fulbright when they are also applying to the Fulbright, it's not mandatory, but it's reasonable to apply to multiple universities so that they have more chance to be accepted. So this is very interesting for me. So this was your perfect fit. So you didn't have any doubts about it. And of course you made a strong application, otherwise you wouldn't be with us today. So once again, I would ask you about hints to students and Italian students who would like to apply. And also I would like to ask to Lindsay, so which are the most common mistakes that applicants make when it's about the application? Because you've been already saying that when they write the personal statement, they forgot to change the name of the university. So this is a very huge mistake that, I mean, this is really something that you shouldn't do. So I have this question about the application. So different questions, but related to the application for the two of you.
Okay. Lindsay, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just kind of talk briefly about some common mistakes that we see. I do think like the proofreading, like some grammatical errors, or just kind of you know, in the personal statement or other parts, just don't really put across a professional I guess presentation for the applicant. So just making sure that you're kind of, you know, reviewing and proofreading. I also think a lot of folks wait until the last minute or don't give themselves enough time, and so they're feeling very, very rushed, and that creates a lot of anxiety and stress, and you know, they're trying to get everything in and asking recommenders at the last minute, or kind of like Vincenzo was saying, they didn't have enough time to prepare for the standardized test, and so they're not testing as well and not really putting showing their capabilities or potential, because they just didn't give themselves enough time to prepare. And so, you know, a lot of times with the standardized test, there is a way to study and there is a way to do better, and that is something that you still have control over in your application. Like you may not have control over your grades because like you already kind of completed that in your undergrad, but the standardized test can give you an opportunity, if you prepare well, to show the graduate school that you can study and do well, if you do kind of take the time to prepare. So I would say kind of the timing and giving yourself enough time to prepare, and then also proofreading. I think those things are kind of the biggest things that I would just caution folks to, you know, just be mindful of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, yeah, as an advice, again, take time for the standardized test, because usually it requires a lot of weeks or months to be prepared. And then also for the IELTS or for any language test, because it could be also a time-consuming process. Then I decided to apply only to McCourt because I was pretty sure about attending an MPP program, so Master in Public Policy. I'm really interested in economics and in statistics, and here in McCourt there is a really good amount of classes on microeconomics and on statistics in general, regression methods in particular. So I found a wonderful program here, and I just decided to apply here in the United States. Of course, I applied to other universities in Europe, but this is, in my opinion, if you are really interested in economics, especially in also application of it, like macroeconomics or something else, I think that the MPP program here gives you a lot of opportunity that other universities usually do not give you. Is also like a place where you can study comparative or also domestic, of course, but I'm more interested in a comparative public policy process or public policy management. And I'm now attending my class in public policy management, and I think that it is a wonderful course to understand how to evaluate or to implement policy all around the world. Especially we have like some case studies based on development country, and I don't know. Also, it is wonderful because you have many electives during the 2 years program. For the first semester, I had the opportunity to study homeland security, and in this semester I'm studying advanced micro and macroeconomics. So that's why I choose McCourt. I think that is like really a great school for public policy, and the fact that it's in DC is a plus.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Federica, do you have questions? Otherwise, I would go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have a question for both of you. Vincenzo, I would like to know, is this your first long stay abroad, or have you been abroad somewhere else to study?
No, this is my first experience outside Italy, and I've never studied abroad for a longer period than a few weeks. So yeah, when I moved here was August 2021, and I felt like a cultural shock because of course the US are completely different from Italy, but I can say that after a few days, few weeks, when you start making friends, you will feel like home. So
yeah, you look very happy, so I'm sure you did the right choice. I have a question for you, and sorry, Laura, do you want to ask a question to Lindsay first?
No, go ahead with Vincenzo.
Okay, because for the Master of Public Policy, did you need to have as a requirement, did you have some professional experience? So maybe for this kind of program, it wasn't that important, right? Because what have you studied in Italy previously? You did an undergraduate program in economics, and
yes,
did you do?
I don't remember because I have some work experience, so I let Lindsay reply to this question.
Okay.
And then
sure. Yeah, I can speak from like the admissions perspective, but maybe also Vincenzo, you can kind of talk about if you felt like the professional experience was necessary prior to coming to graduate school, or if, you probably are in class with people that came straight from undergrad as well. So, but just from an admissions perspective for our policy, Master of Public Policy program, we don't have a work experience requirement. So we do see folks coming straight out of undergrad, but on average, I think our students tend to have 2 to 3 years. So we do see folks coming straight out of undergrad, students that have a couple years of work experience. It may not be policy related, and they're using it as a way to pivot into policy, or there's folks that have some policy experience using it as like a career enhancer, or to kind of, focus more on a specific area or build a kind of hard quantitative skill set. So we do really have just a very diverse group of students. Kind of the common theme is that they're all very passionate about public policy and have noticed something in their experience or educational professional experiences gap that they feel like McCourt can kind of help them build the skills that they need to kind of achieve whatever career goals they have moving forward. So that's kind of what we see in the application pool.
Thank you. So if I have a very good student who doesn't have that much professional experience, he could still apply if he had arguments to say why this program, why he would be a good fit for the university as well.
Of course, yeah. So the folks that are coming straight from undergrad and don't have much professional experience, something in there, maybe undergrad experience, maybe it was an internship or extracurricular, or they just have kind of always known this is kind of what they want to do. If they can like articulate that in their academic statement,
that would be
that.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to ask about the recommended score for TOEFL or IELTS. What is the level of English they should master to apply for a graduate program at McCourt?
Sure. I think overall score for the TOEFL of at least a 100 with a 25 in each section. That's kind of what we, I think we'd like to see something higher than that, but like if it's any lower than that, we really kind of are a little bit hesitant. We don't do numerical cutoffs, but we can look at other parts of the application, or we might request an interview just to kind of gauge English capabilities. I think for the IELTS, it's about a 7 overall score that we recommend at least with a 6.5 or 7 in each of the sections. So, but again, the higher the better. And so those are kind of just like
as always
average scores.
Okay. Thank you. And Vincenzo, did you get sorry, Laura.
No, go ahead, Federica, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask him out of curiosity if he got a scholarship or also, I mean, a partial scholarship or not. And if he
I got a private scholarship, not a scholarship from Georgetown, and I did not apply to Fulbright in the past.
Not for Fulbright. Okay.
Now, for example, I applied on the last call for application, and so I sent my application, I think, in January last year, and I'd recommend to apply before the last call, because it's also easier to, Lindsay, you can correct me, but I think it's also a little bit easier to get a scholarship from the school because there are more opportunities, and then the last chance is a lot of people and a lot of spots have been taken, so there are fewer opportunities to get scholarship from the school.
Yeah, just kind of how our scholarship process works. We do have 2 earlier deadlines where if you submit your application, you're automatically considered. So it's not like a separate application process for merit-based funding. Most of our scholarships are partial tuition. It depends, again, on the university that you're applying to. So they can range from, no scholarship to, like, there's 10% awards, 25%, 33%, 50%. And then we have 5 like full tuition scholarships that we call our McCourt Scholars that are for across all programs. And so there's no separate application process for any of those. It's just based on your original application materials. I think about 60% of our students come in with some sort of kind of merit-based offer attached. And so, I think a majority of students kind of finance their education with a mix of maybe some merit-based awards, possibly something from a third-party organization, or if they applied to external scholarships, personal finances, or if they're U.S. students, some sort of loan as well. So, and we have a lot of students that are taking on part-time positions once they arrive on campus. So we have assistantship opportunities that are paid on an hourly basis. Where a lot of our students do internships throughout the course of their time at McCourt, and a lot of those are paid. And if they're not paid, there's this application process at the school that you can apply for funding to supplement that. So that's and there's additional funding opportunities available for second-year students, like our Dean Scholarship Awards and stuff like that.
That's great. Thank you. Laura.
And one last question, which is about assistantships. Are there assistantships in your master offer?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm not sure if Vincenzo, you have experience with that, but kind of how that process works. It's not really allocated at the time of admission. There are some for our school, and I think some schools do that as a part of their, they do tuition reduction if you kind of are going to agree to work on campus or as a research assistant. But how our process works, we have graduate assistants available, which are just assistants in our administrative offices. So admissions, we have a graduate assistant that comes in and helps us with different projects. And then we have research assistants that are available to help with faculty members or the various research centers that are affiliated with McCourt. And then there's teaching assistantships available. Those are typically reserved for second-year students that they've already kind of taken some of our core classes and are assisting some professors with those courses. So how the process works is closer to the start of the fall semester, we send out a call for applications. So we list all the positions available, and then students that are joining first year and second year can apply for those positions. And you can work up to 20 hours a week, and they're paid on an hourly basis. And so, and international students, they can work on campus. There's no visa restrictions the first year. I think for off campus, internships, typically they have to wait until the end of the first year, but can begin doing those types of things the summer after their first year.
Thank you. We have so many questions. I have a last one, because this is something that for students is very important. Do you have OPT opportunities that you help students? Can they get an OPT after studying at your school through your help, through the help of the university? Optional, yeah?
Yes, we do have that. I'm not as familiar with that process, but we do have an Office of Global Services that can help with that. One of our programs, the Data Science for Public Policy, is a STEM certified program, so that is helpful. And then the MPP and the MIDP programs, we're in the process of them becoming STEM certified, so that should also help with that process. So we're waiting to hear back, but the application process is in, so we're hoping that that will kind of sort itself out.
Thank you. So that they can stay up to 3 years in the US working. That's great. Lindsay, Vincenzo, that was a terrific presentation. Thank you so much. We learned a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Vincenzo, we will also contact you if any of our students, okay, we'll put in touch with you both, our interested students, with your permission.
Please do.
No problem.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Vincenzo, for joining. We appreciate you.
Grazie mille.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you both.
A presto.
Bye.
Bye.
A presto. Ciao.